You have one right behind me from when I was getting my girls ring. Look at that. We started already. You know what? Screw it. I'm just going to keep that in. I'm not even editing it. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to the Fit 40 podcast. This is the vibe that we're going with. It's a really good tell of where this is going to go because I have Aram Grigorian in the house, 4 weeks to the beach, probably one of the most honest and high level coaches you will ever come across. And I love picking his brain and going back and forth on topics. So we're going to cover things like menopause and as far as how you should structure your training, your nutrition, and pretty much anything else that comes up. So, Aram, welcome to the show.
Dude, I can't thank you enough. Whenever I get a chance to speak with you, and every time you come up onto the Real Coaches support network meetings, I'm always excited because I don't have a lot of friends anymore, really. Like, just because, as a 41-year-old man who's really into his job and his life, it's hard to find people that you actually enjoy talking to and have being in the presence of. And you're one of those few, man. Like, there's not a lot of people who I can spend a lot of time chopping it up with, but it's just always so easy with you. You're genuine. You do this for the right reasons. You do it the right way. And I have nothing but the utmost respect for you, and your fucking audience is lucky to have.
Well, I appreciate that. And bonus points for buttering me up right at the very start. That's how you do it, people. Take notes. All right. But yeah, same for you, man, because I love chopping it up with somebody like yourself who believes what he believes for certain reasons. Like you actually have a why behind everything that you do. And I love talking to people like that because that's where it's like we could go back and forth and come up with like really, really good solutions or like maybe question our own way of doing things. And that's how we all get better. And I think that that's what's kind of missing right now with a lot of people online where they're just like, I believe this, F you. So instead of that, why don't we talk about it a little bit? I'd like to start on the whole menopause topic because I know that's
Sure.
that's catching fire right now. That's like the hot thing. And basically the menopause crowd is the majority of people who reach out for a coach, who want to get in better shape, who want to improve their lifestyle. So let's say somebody comes to you and they're like, hey, I hit this point in my life, nothing seems to be working. What would you start with? Like, what would be the first couple of questions you'd ask them?
I always love the statement, nothing seems to be working. I'm like, what do you mean nothing seems to be working? Like, what are you actually doing? That's the easiest place to start. And maybe it's just the way that I'm personally wired. Like, I'm going to exhaust literally every avenue of opportunity that I can before I can ever make a statement like nothing is working. Like, I'll give you a really stupid example. I have a screen door in the back of my house in my apartment. And I've now gone through three of these things. My fucking dog ran through one of them, like literally just sprinted through the screen door and didn't know it was closed. Because he's 12 and a half. He's probably, a little old and batty, but he's still a pit bull and he's a powerhouse. And during the fireworks one day, like he just fucking ran through it, and it was like a cartoon, like in the cartoons when like the imprint of the human body is on the wall. He just left like this imprint in the screen door, so that one was gone. Put a new one on, it doesn't quite slide right. So I'm on YouTube, I'm scanning the QR code on the box, I'm cutting this, I'm altering this, blah blah blah. So I got to a point where I literally spent probably 5 to 6 hours of my time trying to put this fucking screen door on the right way. So after multiple attempts of doing it over the course of multiple days and just like being frustrated, I'm like, okay, I clearly don't have the savvy or the understanding of how this works. Maybe it's something wrong with the track of the door. Maybe the thing is just isn't sliding right because the door frame itself is now off. So what did I do? I fucking called a handyman. I'm like, bro, just come over here and take care of it. And for $150, the problem was solved. And what I don't understand with a lot of people is like they get their hair cut by somebody else. Somebody else mows their lawn. They get their oil changed by somebody else. They have a tax guy. They got a guy for everything. But when it comes to their own nutrition and fitness, they're like, oh, I'll just figure it out. And we're talking about like deep, complex, individual, personalized science here. Like nobody was taught this stuff in school. Nobody was taught about any of these subjects anywhere in their life, and it was piecemealed, acquired by them. And where are they getting their shit from? They're probably getting it from some shithead on social media. They're getting it from some talking head, and we can't verify or validate that any of this information is going to properly apply to that individual. That's the hardest part. So, like, for example, like menopause. We've got like the Stacey Sims of the world and the Marie Claires of the world and all these other women who are doctors who say all this shit, but then they don't really paint with any context because they want you to buy something from them before they tell you anything helpful whatsoever.
Yeah. Or
So outside of blanket state,
I think what happens with them too is like they get caught up in the academia side of it and they're like, I want to be the most writerist. And that's like all they genuinely, that's how they frame everything is like, I want to be 100% accurate, perfect, and I don't care about context or anything. So everybody's left with these little tidbits and they're like, so
right? Well, it's because they have a fucking book out and they're going to be on Oprah next week, and they're it's this constant thing of just like building authority. And listen, I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm an MD or that I have. Sorry, I think I lost you there.
you're
Oh,
all
there you
good.
are. I'm not an MD. It's not like I have 40 years of experience of working in the menopausal, hormonal state of women on a clinical level, but I've got 5 years of experience working with multiple women. At this point, I think I looked the other day, 350 plus of women 40 plus who I've helped achieve fat loss, just like you have. So it's like we have anecdotal evidence that we know that if we do certain things with their calories and macronutrients, if we do certain things with their fitness, if we do certain things with their stress management, and certain things with their sleep and movement, they tend to lose weight despite the challenges of menopause. These aren't like broken people. That I think what happens with a lot of women is they're almost pathologized to believe that they're truly actually broken, that there is no more help for them unless they go to this specific person who's giving them these specific vitamins and supplements and all these ways out. When at the end of the day, most of this shit is a lifestyle problem anyway. Like, yeah, is it going to be harder in menopause? Sure. When your hormones are tanked, you're going to have shittier sleep. Your mood's going to suck. Your energy levels are going to suffer. Your cognitive function is going to suffer. So, what that indirectly does is it makes decision making that much more challenging. So, when you're sitting there and you got the stress of life and the stress of kids and the stress of your own body image and the stress of your husband and the stress of your job, one more stressor on top of that is just going to break you and make you feel like absolute dog shit. So, what's the solution? Just managing your time and managing your expectations and understanding that, like, yeah, it's going to be harder, but if you haven't audited what these everything is that you've said that you've done, what is everything? Have you tracked your food? Have you understood how to train with weights properly? Have you sought out any guidance from anybody outside of just being told that you're broken by somebody on social media? So I always want to understand, like, what is it that you're doing now and what can we improve upon before we just mail it in and say that this is just not working.
Yeah. And I think what you convey very well with the way that you message it, and I've kind of caught myself transitioning a little bit more in that direction is like, all right, like I hear you, but like let's challenge that. Like let's say, okay, do you sleep X amount? Do you eat enough protein? Do you do this? Do you do all these basics? And then we can formulate what the opinion going forward would be. It's like, so let's just find out what happens when you do all these things right. Because a lot of people like how you just mentioned, they're convinced that they're broken, but they haven't nailed those basics and they're going to the doctor for help. And they're like, okay, I think this will help, but it's this moving, vague target without any foundation. So it's like, where are you really operating from and making that decision from? It's like you're trying to, I don't know, trying to hit a bullseye from a football field away.
And it's also conflicting information, right? Because one person is saying cardio is bad, one person is saying cardio is good, one person is saying lift weights, but don't lift weights too often because then your cortisol is going to go up and you're going to die of cortisol poisoning. You know what I mean? Like there's like it's very hard to understand as a person who truly is in a let's call it what it is. It's kind of a desperate state. They've gotten to a point where their body image sucks and they've probably dieted multiple times and it used to work and now they're trying to diet again and it doesn't work. And it's like, well, it doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Does it not work because you're not dieting consistently and accurately? Are you not really actually dotting all your I's and crossing all your T's? Are you dieting Monday through Thursday, but then not Friday through Sunday? Do you understand that your metabolism may not be as functional as it used to be because you don't have as much muscle mass as you may have had before, or you have none, period? So, like, all of these things need to be considered before you just completely throw your hands up and say, fuck it. And I think also too, like labeling people is probably one of the most harmful things to do.
Yeah, because a diagnosis is great because it'll actually give us some sort of a direction and it'll give us like, I mean, let's say somebody has PCOS, insulin resistant, or they got a thyroid thing going on. It's like, okay, now we have a direction to manage that, but that doesn't mean that you are now labeled like you are PCOS, you are insulin resistant. Like technically, yes, but that doesn't mean that you have to take on the personality traits that come with a diagnosis. It means, okay, I got to do X, Y, and Z. And once I've got those nailed, then I can work on the stuff that works for everybody.
And that's the thing is just because there's a challenge present, just because you have a condition, and I mean let's be honest, like endometriosis, PCOS, hormone dysfunction, these are all conditions that certainly do require some attention of some kind, whether that be pharmaceutical, whether that be medical attention, whether that be addressing lifestyle or nutritional habits. Like something does obviously need to be addressed, but you don't need to wear that like a cloak that has to then be wrapped up, that you're wrapped up in. Then there's just no way out anymore. And the easiest example I can give, and the reason why I work with women, is because I understand how impactful hormone dysfunction really is. Like it fucked me up when I was 31 years old. My testosterone level was below 200. It was like 120. And anybody that knows anything about like testosterone and anything like that, like for a man, like like in range is somewhere between like the high twos and the low nines. So it's a really broad range. But like most men function pretty well somewhere between like 5 and 700. So as a 31-year-old man, I'm in the basement. I'm below the level of like what an old man would be. And like libido was gone. Erectile function was gone. Mood was dog shit. Couldn't build any strength or muscle mass despite me trying. And when I say trying, like I mean like with my level of understanding as a nutrition and fitness coach, trying, lifting weights, sleeping well, eating all my meals, nailing my protein, like doing, when I say everything right, I truly mean uncovering and turning over every possible stone. I promise you, and because I have evidence of this, every woman that comes to me that says she's tried everything, maybe it was for a couple of weeks, right? Maybe it was for a little
Like
short period of time. But I mean,
consistently
I
and
tried everything.
accurately for a couple of weeks.
Well,
Like you could try for
right.
months, kind of, and kind of be there, maybe
Yes.
even years,
Yes.
but how accurately, consistently was it?
No, like I was tracking my food. I was going to the gym 3 or 4 times. I had a workout log. I was going to bed at 9:30 at night every day. I was taking supplements. Like I did literally everything right for 7+ months, and nothing was changing. Then I started going down the medical route, going to doctors, trying to get opinions. What's going on? And it wasn't until my fourth doctor that I finally went to, who wanted to run comprehensive thyroid and blood marker labs for my hormones as well, until we found out that I was drastically deficient in testosterone. So what happened? I got put on TRT. And lo and behold, 10 years later, fat loss is whenever I feel like it. Muscle gain is whenever I feel like it. Energy is fine. Like everything is fine. I had an actual medical problem. Now, that's what menopause is. Menopause is the decline of your hormones. It's not you're dying. It's not going to prohibit you from being able to live a full, perfect life if you take the measures to take care of yourself. But you have to ask yourself, like, how honest am I truly being about my behavior? What am I leaving on the table? What am I not accounting for? At some point, there has to be a level of personal responsibility and personal auditing and honesty to say, maybe I haven't actually given this the full attention that it deserves. Maybe I am letting things slip through the cracks. Maybe I am being a little bit loosey goosey with my ability to account for my food or recall my food consumption. Maybe I don't really train all that hard and I'm just kind of mailing it in and going through the motions. So, unless you're asking yourself all these questions, you can't label yourself as somebody who's done everything right and nothing is working. It's just an unfair statement to make.
Yeah, and I think that gets a little bit into the whole concept of like being your own advocate because everybody takes that to mean like, all right, I'm going to use Dr. Google to question every single thing my doctor says when maybe it's okay, I'm going to do everything on my end to make sure that I'm giving my medical professional that I'm working with the best possible situation so we can figure it out. Not, oh, I'm just
Yep.
going to leave it all to them and say that they don't know what the hell they're talking about. And how you mentioned like your issue with testosterone, I couldn't help but laugh a little bit internally where I'm like, that's how I feel when people say, oh, I have ADHD. That's why I can't be consistent. And I'm like, bitch, welcome to the club. Like I've had it since I got diagnosed since 10, like 10 or 13, somewhere in that ballpark. They hooked the electrodes up to my head. I took every test. I legitimately have it. And I know it's on a spectrum. I know it's like some can go really bad, some can be not pretty mild. Like I get it. But at the same time, it's like that doesn't mean it's a death sentence to the point where you can't function as a human being. Like take the medication, come up with strategies that make it easier, like keeping a calendar, for example, which I did. And it was an absolute lifesaver because I'm not saying, oh, sorry, I forgot. Oh, sorry, I was late. Oh, it's no, it's there. But you got to take it to that point where you take responsibility.
I think that's the hard part, man. It's because when you take responsibility, it's then nobody else's fault anymore. Like nobody else can be blamed for the problem. And that's not easy to do because it's very much a simpler path to say and pathologize, like, I have this problem and I have this condition, and so it prohibits me from XYZ. As opposed to, how high is that wall in front of you? Most of the time, if you actually think about any of these conditions, the wall is like chest high. So what does that require? It requires you putting your hands on top of the wall and having enough strength to push yourself up over it and then climb over the wall. And now you're on the other side of it. It's good. This isn't like scaling Mount Everest for the 95th time. Like all this requires is just paying a little bit more attention to your habits, to your mindset, to what practices you're actually installing to manage your stress, to manage your sleep, to manage your nutrition. And it's not like we're at, and we talked about this before we started. Most reasonable coaches online are not making their clients completely sacrifice all the pleasures in their life. They're not saying don't ever go out to eat. They're not saying I need you to do 4 hours of cardio a day and you have to lift 6 times a week and you have to sacrifice all your desserts and all your pizza and all your booze and never have a meal out with your family. All we're saying is like, just if you haven't done so for some time, put your fucking food on a scale for a couple of weeks. Like if you don't want to do it for a month, fine. Just do it for 2 weeks consistently, and I promise you, we're going to see some opportunities that you never saw before and that you've never considered. So cool. Now we have some data. We can now take that data and do something with it. We can determine, does this person need to eat more protein, less carbs, more fats, less carbs? Like where do we have to go? But without that data, it's unfair, completely unfair to say that you've done it all. It would be like walking into a doctor's office and suspecting, quote unquote, that you have cancer, and then just standing there and being like, Doc, when am I going to die of this disease that I think I have? Well, it's like, I don't know. I have to run XYZ tests, and I have to put you under this type of test, and I have to run this analysis. I can't just sit here and tell you what the problem is because I don't have any data. And most people don't collect any of their own data. They don't know how many steps they take. They don't track their sets and their reps. They don't track their food. Everything is just going through the motions and doing it mindlessly, just task to task to task and never really being intentional with any of it. And then they wake up at like 48 with a diagnosis of you're in menopause and now you're fucked. It's like, well, no, I'm not fucked. This is a natural process that is supposed to occur to every single living woman on earth. Like men have it too. It's called andropause. We go through it earlier, ladies. Sorry. We actually, like, a woman's prime physiologically is like in her early to mid 30s, whereas a man's prime is like in his early to mid 20s. So
We
after that,
flame
we're on
out.
our decline.
We flame out early.
That's it. Like exactly. So this isn't a trauma competition. I'm not trying to say like a man's got it worse than a woman or a woman's got it worse than a man. We all equally are fucked at some point anyway, because the human body is meant to break down like any other piece of machinery that you don't take care of. But what's the common denominator of people who can get through their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and they're still playing pickleball with their friends at 85, and they're over 50 community in Florida, and they're riding bikes and they're living this full life? Why? Because they fucking took care of themselves. That's it.
And I think the key concept there that you're getting at is the whole idea of actually like honest awareness, because most people are operating in that place of uncertainty. They don't know, like, hey, oh, I only got one workout in the past 3 months. They're like, well, I've been trying to get to the gym, or, oh, I've been eating so healthy. I don't get it. It's like, but we don't know where your calories are. So you could have super healthy, calorie dense stuff that's still pushing you in the wrong direction. So it comes down to understanding what is it and then what are we going to do about it, because it makes me think of a conversation I had, like probably one of the last months I was actually in person at the gym I was at, me and another trainer, and she was talking to one of the clients, and a client was saying, I'm having trouble with this, like I can't get this weight off, like I don't know what the deal is. And the trainer was kind of more or less saying like, it's okay, like you just keep working hard, you'll be fine. And I kind of go in because I think I was head trainer at the time, and I butt in and I'm like, so what's going on? And she's like, this and this. And I'm like, okay, so we got this and this in the equation, what are we going to do about it? And she's like, see, that's what I want. Like, nobody wants a coach that's like, no, it'll all be fine. It's like, no, let's get to the core, the root of it.
And the root of it doesn't have to be complicated. Like 9 out of 10 times, if not even more than that, is it's a function of just not being prepared. Like if you're not prepared, right, and everybody has to eat. We can, I think all of us can sit here and agree every human being has to eat and is going to eat until the last breath they take. Like food is going to be a part of your life forever. So if you're a victim to your food, if you're powerless over your food, if you don't have systems for your food, if you don't have rules and regulations about your food, it's like any other substance in life. You can have too much of it, or it might not be enough of it. In most cases, what's the problem? Not enough means protein. Too much probably means calories. And where are those calories coming from? Well, if protein's not enough, then it's not coming from that. So it's probably coming from carbs and fats. So we can tease out where the problem is. And this, like, you don't, like, and here's the thing. I'm going to die on the hill, and you know this more than anybody, that everybody should track their food. But the other hill that I'll die on is you don't have to track your food to lose weight, but you have to have a fucking system in place. And a system means, am I eating about the same things 3 to 4 times a day? And I use the numbers 3 and 4 because for most people, if they're awake at around 5 and they're asleep around 10, you're eating about every 3 hours. Like I don't think that's a hard thing to follow. And if you want to break that down and make it even simpler, when I'm looking down on my plate, is there a visible large bolus piece of some type of lean protein? And is there a vegetable or a fruit present at each meal? And every once in a while, am I having a natural starch source, like a rice, a potato, something in that department? That doesn't mean that I can't have bread. That doesn't mean that I can't have pasta. It doesn't mean that I can't have cookies. It just means that those things can't be the prevalence of my nutritional intake. So if you're doing those basic things and you have them on lockdown, meaning that they're just consistent every single day without fail, and on the weekends and when you travel, because those things matter too. Like I'm going to go to the Arnold Classic this weekend. From Thursday to Sunday, I'll be in Ohio. What am I doing to stay on top of my nutrition? I got a fucking Airbnb instead of a hotel. Why? So I can have a kitchen. Why? So I can have groceries. Why? So I can eat at least 2 out of 3 of my meals in my Airbnb, and I don't have to be subject to having to eat out and then have to play the guessing game on what ingredients I'm having and what my portion control is going to be or lack thereof. But most people don't take these proactive measures. And then they also, unfortunately, have the audacity to say, I've done everything right.
Yeah.
No, the fuck you haven't.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring that up because I know plenty of my clients have to travel a ton. And the ones that have their breakfast, for example, like locked in and ready to go because they bring protein powder or they bring protein bars or they get something there that they know they have access to quality food, they usually do a whole lot better. And I know when I go to the Real Coaches Summit in April or any conference that I've been to, whether it was Luca's in November, in September, or Dallas with Raise the Bar, first thing is always go to DoorDash, get my caffeine and get my protein. Like make sure that I'm set from the very first meal. So it's like you got to take those measures if you truly do want to make a change and keep it.
And I think anybody that's like a fit person, I'm going to use that in air quotes also, loves their routine. I was just talking about this. I had a client that was in Mexico for a few days and she came home. And the best thing that she told me was like, I loved being there. I was very present. I didn't worry about any of my food consumption. I worked out a couple of days. Wasn't anything crazy. I just wanted to move my body. But I couldn't wait to get home and get back to my routine because it makes me feel so good. Right? Like, how many people do we know that are waiting for that vacation to get away from their life versus who's coming back from that vacation waiting to get back to their life? When you know that your routine is such an awesome routine that you crave it while you're on vacation, that's when you know you've made it. But when you're on the other spectrum of, I can't wait to get away from here, my life sucks, everything is horrible. Well, yeah, you've set up an environment that sucks. That's your problem that you need to fix. I have multiple clients who struggle with having a lack of a routine. That's the only problem they have. right? Like everything is unpredictable. I don't know what I'm going to eat. And when I am eating, I don't know where I'm going to get it. Well, you can't live life like that. You're not a fucking child. Like when anybody that has kids, when their kids have activities, what do the parents do? They pack all their kids' fucking food for the entire day. Why don't you do that for yourself? Why does that stop when you become an adult? Why does all of your structure leave your brain the second you have autonomy? I just don't understand that. Like this concept of adulting is hard. It's only hard because you make it hard. It's only hard because you don't plan anything ahead. You live life always chasing your tail and never being proactive about it. Like I don't leave anything to chance. Tonight, when I'm done with work, what am I going to do? As I'm sitting here right now talking to you on a podcast, my laundry is getting done in a machine that's doing it for me, right? So like anybody that bitches about laundry, like you put it in a hole, you close the hole, you walk away from it, you go back to your life and you go back to the hole to put it into the drying hole, and then all you got to do is fold it. So now I got clean clothes that I can bring with me to Ohio, right? Tonight, I'm going to cook 2 pounds of chicken that I've had in the fridge that's ground chicken ready to go. I'm going to prep it. I'm going to put it into plastic containers. I'm going to freeze them overnight. And I'm going to throw those plastic containers into my carry on for tomorrow. And then that way, I don't even have to buy any meat when I'm at the Airbnb. I already have meat prepared. I can just throw it on a plate and eat it when I'm there. I'm also going to make eggs tonight to put into a plastic container to bring on the plane tomorrow so that I don't have to eat airport food or airplane food because it's garbage. So this is how it doesn't. What did it take me? 30 fucking minutes? All it does is it's just a little bit of proactivity that people just don't use. And then they wonder why they're stressed, overwhelmed, anxious all the time because you're running from thing to thing. You're always late. You're not mindful of any of it. You're not intentional about any of it. So, of course, you're unprepared. Of course, you're fucking backed up and you're anxious. I would be too if I was living life in that state. But I don't allow myself to do that because I don't want to feel like that. It's a choice that I make. And you're capable of making it. Susan's capable of making it. Andrea's capable of making it. We're all capable of it, but who's choosing it and who's not?
Yeah, and as you're saying that, it made me think of like I was just having this conversation with a client. She's got to be at her kids' cheer competitions like almost every freaking weekend, and those things are nuts. Like it's all day. It's absolutely like maybe like 12-hour days, and we're talking about getting into the flow of things and getting into a routine. And I'm like, listen, you're striving for balance here and you're waiting for like the seas to part and for the clouds to part and everything to be perfect, but that's never going to happen. Like this doesn't exist and people are chasing this thing that'll never ever happen. But what you just talked about was harmony. It's like you find a way to make everything flow together. Like you got the clothes
That's
going,
it.
you have your meal prepped, you do all this stuff together, not just trying to make this one big thing that's 30 minutes be so much bigger than it has to be.
It's so simple, and that's what drives me so crazy about this industry, man. Is like I just want to grab every person and shake them and just put them into my world for a minute. Because listen, I understand. I'm gonna be very honest with your audience. I don't want to use the word privilege because I fucking earned every ounce of what I have, but I have the luxury, let's call it that, to work from home. So do you. We get to sit in front of our computer and do what we do, which means that when we need to eat, we can just walk over to the refrigerator, grab our food, sit down for 5 or 10 minutes, wolf it down, go back to our computer. So if your life isn't made like that, right? If you're somebody who has to leave your house to go to work somewhere else, I bet that that somewhere else probably has a refrigerator. And if it doesn't have a refrigerator, and let's say you're a line worker who works, on power lines. Let's say you're a door-to-door salesman. Well, guess what? You put a fucking cooler in your car, just like that woman who's going to be going to the cheerleading competition. She could have a cooler in her car because I'm sure she had to drive there, and now you have a refrigeration area right there. And okay, I don't like to eat my meals cold. Cool. Neither do I, but sometimes I got to fucking do it because that's the only circumstance I have. So be it. If one meal out of 30 has to be eaten cold, but it allows me to feel my best, have energy, be satiated, and stay on top of my goals, I can make that very uncomfortable sacrifice one out of 30 meals, and so can you, and so can anybody. So this is what I don't get is that why do you complain about XYZ problem when you actually don't proactively seek solutions to that problem? Because anybody can find problems in their life. I can find a million right now. I'm fucking $80,000 in debt. I have an event that I run that gives me nothing but fucking headaches. Why did I choose to do it? Well, I chose to do it because I think it's a positive thing to do for my industry. And it provides a massive level of satisfaction to me when I get to see all those smiling faces who then have growth in their business and growth in their personal life because of that event that they attended. And I'm doing it at a personal expense to my emotional well being, my spiritual well being, and my financial well being. But it's a sacrifice that I'm willing to make. So I'm not going to complain about it. So if you're not willing to make that sacrifice, you don't also get to bitch about the fact that you're not getting the result that you want because you haven't turned over every stone and you haven't exhausted every option. And you're still going to always find the path of least resistance, which at some point, preparation is the path of least resistance. That work that you're avoiding doing is going to save you so much trouble overall in your life. You'll get so much time back. You'll alleviate stress. Overwhelm will dissipate. Anxiety will be gone. Is that 30 minutes in the kitchen not worth those results? I just don't see why people aren't doing it.
Yeah. And I know I tell clients all the time, I love lazy prep, for example. I just cooked up extra chicken last night, didn't even take an extra 30 minutes. It's like there's even simpler ways to do this stuff. But you need to know one, actually, that you can do it. And number two, you got to have somebody that's going to hold you to the flame a little bit because there's
That's it.
a lot of stuff that is out there on the internet. Like, let's be honest, everybody can be in incredible shape, be in the best possible health they're capable of just by doing a Google search. But why are they not doing it?
Because there's no intrinsic motivation to do it. Like, listen, I think inherently, like that's what human beings are. Like, human psychology lends itself to the fact that most of us just want to do nothing and just be here existing. Like, that's just kind of where most people are wired. Like, if you actually look around, what is it, 8 billion people in the world now? I think something around there.
Something like that.
How many of those 8 billion people are actually productive, successful, happy human beings? I would say that it's a
Well,
relatively small
I
percentage,
can tell
unfortunately.
you. I can tell you my fiance went to Grenada for med school, and in Grenada, they really have very little expenses and they get a lot of things just taken care of for them. And guess what most of the population does? They sit around and drink all. Because that's
I
honestly
mean,
like if we had all of our human needs met, how many people would be doing that?
I think probably a lot. And if you look at anybody who ever grew up with any privilege, the common denominator always is, almost in every case, is that those people don't have any gratitude and they don't understand the value of money and the value of time. And they don't have any proactive measures for self care because everything was catered to them. And unfortunately, like, again, not to go back to the whole my problems are worse than your problems, but let's be very clear. Like, even the worst problem in America pales in comparison to a problem in Africa or in Asia or in Europe. Like, all these other places, even in westernized worlds like in Europe, people's average day is just harder. They have more bullshit to deal with than we do. Like, we talk about like how hard our lives are in America. Like, even at the worst poverty that we see in America, people still, like, I live in San Diego. Dude, I can spit and hit a homeless person every fucking corner that I'm on. Guess what they have in their hand? A cell phone. Guess what they've designed and constructed for homeless people in San Diego? Villages with porta potties. And there's entire communities of homeless people that are living in tents that are set up by the state, and there's porta potties for them to go use and shower. And they just live for free. And they have government subsidized cell phones. So don't tell me how hard your day is unless you've actually truly fucking hit rock bottom. If you're able to consume your content and my content from a cell phone, you have the resources to go to a grocery store. You have the time to go to a grocery store. If you don't, you can get groceries delivered to your fucking house at this point, which is what I do every goddamn week because I don't want to go to the grocery store. I'd rather pay shithead $10 to go drop it off at my front door so I can continue servicing the people that I have to service. So all of these solutions exist, right? But if you're only focused on the problem, and the problem is your number one focal point, you'll never find a solution. You'll always be a victim. Everything will always be hard, and everything will always be somebody else's fault. And if you want to live like that, understand that that's the choice you're making. Nobody forced you into that corner, you did. Or you can be the other person who says, I have all these fucking problems. I grew up poor. I grew up fat. My parents didn't care about me, but I put myself through school. I learned about nutrition. I changed my habits. And now I'm a successful business owner who's 100 pounds down. Don't you want to be the success story? Or do you want to keep believing in your own bullshit every single day and wondering why your life is passing you by when you have a chance to change all of it at any moment? It's going to be hard and there's going to be resistance, but you're not incapable of it. I've seen so many people win. I mean, dude, fucking Brad Jensen, right? Sober bodybuilder, heroin addict to a successful business owner. I can tell you countless stories of people who have been able to climb out of the worst depths of hell and reinvent themselves. But that's a tiny minority of the population because it takes a hell of a lot of effort and it takes work every single goddamn day that most people just aren't willing to do, as simple as it might be.
Yeah. It's funny. When you go on these riffs, you just make me think of like some things I've heard over the years. And the one big thing that came to mind was I had a client, he had a kid who was an elite level hockey player and he was getting cocky as hell, but it still applied where he's like, listen, the most dangerous thing you can do is believe your own bullshit story. He's like, if you fall in love with your story, you're screwed. And that's all the excuses, all the justifications, all the things that tell you why you can't do something. If you fall in love with that and embody it and let it become a parasite, then you're screwed. But if you do the opposite and challenge your thoughts, challenge your beliefs, challenge your emotions, and say, why don't we find out? Let's give this a shot. That's when everything can totally change.
That's why. Have you ever heard what Shaq said about his kids?
Who
So
said?
apparently, Shaq,
Shaq.
the
Yeah,
former
yeah.
basketball player. So I guess one of his kids was throwing around the idea of like my money or my car. And then Shaq very quickly brought him back down to earth. He said, wait a second. Not your money, not your car. You're lucky to have dad buy you all this shit and give you this stuff. So it's not yours. You're renting it from me under the condition that you'll actually do something with your life and earn what I'm giving you. So like Shaq's not somebody who just throws money at his kids, which I love, right? And we got like Marshawn Lynch, who got mad at his kid because his kid brought home like a seventh place trophy that they gave him. And he's like, that's not what we celebrate in this house. Like we like our here's the thing, guys. Anybody listening to this, look around. Life is fucking easy and it's pretty fucking comfortable. Like, yes, you have to go to work, but good, that's what you should be doing because that gives you purpose. If you decided to have children, just being a parent isn't good enough. You got to be a fucking good parent so you raise good kids who are, become good adults and productive adults and give back to this society and don't suck from it. So like it's not just enough to just show up and give you the bare minimum. Like I've just never understood that. And I'll use this example. I've used this on other podcasts, but I don't know if you saw this, but there was a video that surfaced probably in the last month or so of this guy who was working in a movie theater who was putting together bags of popcorn. And this guy was having so much fun with it, dude. Throwing the bag in the air, spinning it on his finger,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
layering it with butter. And, just a happy guy making what, fucking 12, 13 bucks an hour at a movie theater, making popcorn. But he treated it as if he was putting on a show and he had pride in his work. And that to me is just something I haven't seen in years. I walk into a fucking Starbucks and the barista's miserable, right? I walk into the grocery store and the person bagging groceries is miserable. If you don't like what you're like, when I used to work at a deli for, I was in finance, making 150,000 a fucking year, making $40,000 bonuses. And then I lost my job and I had to go fucking do whatever. And I found my way into a deli for 12 bucks an hour making sandwiches. And after the first couple of weeks of having my little pity party and being like, fuck, my life sucks, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make the best of it. Because I have to come here anyway to show up for work. I'm going to at least put on a smile. I'm going to interact with the customers. And I want to make sure that this 12-hour day doesn't suck. And it didn't. I had a great time. I loved it. After the first couple of weeks, dude, I loved working at the deli because it was fun. I got to actually like be around people I liked. We joked around. I got to meet all sorts of people every single day. People would come in good moods and bad moods. You managed emotions all day long, and I made the best of it. So that's the thing that we've lost as society. We've lost this capability of making the best out of a tough situation. And as opposed to making the tough situation be the thing that defines you, you have the choice to make the best of it. And it comes down to a decision.
Yeah. And I think it kind of gets into that whole concept of like when people are like, how do you say, like, for example, you don't like water? It's like, have you ever had a coach deprive you of water for a 2 hour practice?
Right.
Then you'll freaking
Right.
love water. And it's like, I think all the time when I'm sitting at this desk, like writing programs and my eyes are turning blurry and I'm like, this sucks. And then I think back to, oh, remember when I was landscaping with no gloves and I was picking up stone, getting a bunch of micro slits in my hand? Yeah, that sucked. Where it's like, I think people need a, to expand the threshold. Like, not enough people have had truly shitty jobs. Not enough people have truly gone through really shitty situations where they have that reference point to be like, okay, that's bad. Like, this isn't so bad. Like, this is annoying. We could always upgrade from here, but it's not that bad.
No, perspective is gone, man. Perspective is one of those things where, like, and like, I'll use another story. I think storytelling is the easiest and most profound way to connect with people. I got a kid that I work with who's 21 years old, who started with me at 396 pounds, and his father's heavy. His father's a restaurateur here in Los Angeles. He owns multiple locations, steakhouses, butcher shops. Very successful business owner. Also struggles with his weight. So he hired me. He then paid for his son to hire me as well. So he pays for his son's coaching, and he's now in like month 3 with me, and he's down probably 10 pounds, but he's giving it very minimal effort, right? Like, he's not really tracking his food. He's not really going to the gym. He's not submitting any of his training videos to me. So he's just like, he's kind of half in it, but half out of it. And he submitted a check-in late yesterday, and I sent him a text. I sent him a text message. I'm like, dude, you're late now. 3 check-ins in a row. You've gotten 2 emails about it multiple weeks in a row to remind you when the check-in is. And mind you, this kid doesn't work, doesn't go to college, so his dad pays for him to essentially take care of himself, and he's not even doing that. So finally, I sent him a voice note. I'm like, dude, at some point, you're either going to have to realize that this is going to be all on you, and I can't help you because you don't want to help you. And if somebody doesn't talk to you and light a fire under your ass like it was lit under my ass multiple times throughout my life, and if people keep coddling you and telling you that it's okay to be in this position, you're going to be that 500-pound person who dies of a fucking heart attack in your apartment. And I said that to him. I said, that's your future. If you don't change the way that you live your life right now, that's where you're headed. And I don't give a shit how much money your daddy has. It's not going to save you. Because when you're in a hospital bed dying of cardiovascular disease, no money in the world will bring you back. And your body won't be able to handle a heart transplant because it's not healthy. So if you don't fucking get your shit together at this point, at 21 years old, when you have nothing on the docket but to take care of yourself, you should be listening to audiobooks, fucking self-help podcasts. You should be on a treadmill at Planet Fitness, absorbing as much information as possible. You should fucking be at the grocery store picking out the best avocado because you've got nothing but time. And then going back to your apartment that's being paid for by your father to cook your own meals. Instead, what are you doing? You're staying up until midnight. You're watching fucking hours of television. You don't walk. You don't have any pride in what you do. And it's because you've made yourself get to this point. And everybody else around you has told you it's okay. And I'm telling you, it's not okay. Because nobody told me that it was okay to be stuck at a job that I didn't really want, making money that I really couldn't afford to live in where I was living. And I've just never understood why. I mean, of course, dude, again, back to the everybody's hard is their hard. I've seen what hard is. I know what hard feels like. I never want to go back to hard. I don't ever want to have to fucking suffer and struggle and wonder where my next penny is coming from, or wonder why my digestion sucks, or wonder why my energy levels blow, or wonder why my mood is shitty. Because there's an answer to all of it. And 99% of the time, the answer lies within the very boring work that you just don't feel like doing. That's it. That's all it is. Whether it's building a business, building a physique, improving your relationship with food, improving your relationship with another human being, it requires a little bit of messy, ugly, uncomfortable work, which then stops being uncomfortable because you do it long enough to get good at it. And then it just becomes a part of your life. And then you look back 6 months after, you're like, why the fuck didn't I start this sooner? It wasn't actually that hard. That's it. You just have to get past that uncomfortable point of making that initial decision. And then you're going to show yourself evidence that it wasn't that difficult to begin with.
Yeah, because right now people just are lacking the evidence of I can do this. Like, how many times have they tried the same thing over and over and over again, and they're like, "Well, this just isn't for me." When it's like you really haven't given it the full effort because you've been going, say, the cheap route or the free route, where it's like I'm going to do it all myself, and then basically it's the same thing we see when we buy something cheap on Amazon. You buy it over and over and over again in multiple different forms, and you're just wasting money and you're not getting any closer. But if you buy right, you buy once.
I mean, that's it, dude. Like, I'm not an expensive coach. I charge $298 a month. Like you can pick $298 worth of change out of your couch in a month. Like let's be honest. Like people spend more money on dumber shit than guidance from a good coach.
And
And now,
I
granted,
can
like
tell
other
you right
coaches,
now, anybody who's like, shit, that's a lot. Well, if you do 3 days of DoorDash, you pay it. So if you're not
oh,
doing anything on the
easily.
weekends, like if your kids are like at a friend's house and you have a couple hours to blow, you could do it.
No, I mean and let's be honest. Like we also live in the country where you can pick up an job tomorrow.
Yeah. Or Instacart.
Like
You don't even have to talk to
if you
anybody.
truly if you were truly strapped for cash, like let's say for example, like let's say like you're in dire straits. You're 350 pounds. You're 50% body fat. You're slowly dying of obesity. You work a dead end job that pays you $12 an hour, and you're just scraping by, right? I will give you all the free advice in the world, and it still won't get you to where you want to go because you still have to make the decision to do that stuff. You still have to get over that mental hurdle of I can't do it. Yes, you can. You absolutely can. It's the people that have the least amount of time and the least amount of resources that are the most resourceful, right? I've seen single mothers compete for bodybuilding competitions while raising three kids and have two jobs on top of it. I've seen single dads whose wife died, who then had to parent three children while starting a business on their own. And 5 years from that point, they were successful and they had their financial freedom back. I've seen the craziest shit happen. But again, it requires that individual to believe in themselves and to believe that they're capable. And none of this work is monumentally hard. Like you and I know what hard feels like. We've done physically hard things. Like I've had to box somebody, not had to. I was given the opportunity to box somebody for 3 rounds, and I got the shit beat out of me. And it was the worst 9 minutes of my life, and it was humbling as fuck. Because here I am, 185 pounds, in shape, fighting a guy who's like 220, visibly fat, 20 years older than me, and he beat the fuck out of me because he knew how to box and I didn't. But I thought I was hot shit because I was in shape, and he humbled me in those 9 minutes. Like I've had to work that job that you talked about. I've had to work heating and air conditioning in the middle of the winter, scraping my hands against fucking metal all day long, crawling in fucking basements and attics that were freezing cold. And then conversely, I worked at a farm from 13 to 18 years old, working with guys that were 40, 50-year-old convicts that couldn't get a job anywhere else, bending pipe and making greenhouses. Like that was shit work in the middle of a hot fucking humid Connecticut summer for $8 an hour. So like nothing that you're going to throw at me is going to bother me anymore. Like I lost $75,000 on the event last year. I had to take out a $67,000 loan a week before the event because I had no money to pay the people with. And I just figured it out. And I had to pay that loan back, and I'm still paying it back. Like there's always an answer. But are you looking for the answer, or are you sitting inside the problem?
Exactly. And I think a lot of people just do need to get to that point where it's like, okay, I need to do something about this. Like, how long can we play this game of doing this over and over and over again? Because I know the initial question was like about menopause struggles, but like, if we're being honest, it's life struggles. And it's like, yes, menopause presents a million issues that have to be dealt with, but they can be dealt with. And then it's like, what do we do after that? Like, what do we do when we've addressed that point? And it's like, we got to step up. And if somebody's willing to step up and they're like, okay, I hear what you're saying and I totally agree, but I want to make sure I'm putting my money in the right place because right now money's not falling from trees. Like we're in a tough spot when it comes to as a country. So I think people aren't like necessarily saying I'm not spending money on everything. It's I want to put it in the right place. So you've been around
Yeah.
more coaches than I could probably even count. What are some things that stand out to you that are like, okay, if you're looking for somebody to help you, like I would look for this?
Somebody who's willing to communicate with you for free. So like any coach that puts everything behind a paywall and charges you for consults or makes you fill out all this paperwork just to get on a call with you is somebody who's just going to be trying to perversely sell you something constantly. Like I have 46,000 followers on Instagram. I run a very successful business by myself. I make better money than 95% of the population does. I never thought I would get here. And I'm still not too big to get on a phone call with somebody off of Instagram for absolutely free just to understand what their problems are. I'm not going to sell them coaching because here's the honest fact I don't want to fucking coach everybody. Like, there's plenty of people that have called me. Like, I had a woman that was talking to me a couple weeks ago. And she's like, "Oh, I don't want to track food. I don't want to send you training videos." I'm like, "So what do you want?" "Well, I just want you to tell me what to do." I'm like, "I just told you what to do. Eat more protein. Get into the gym. Eat vegetables at 2 out of 3 meals a day." Like, is that like, okay? So if you don't want to follow my process, here's another coach. I sent her to another coach. She had it was Dahl. Dahl was not somebody she wanted to work with either. But this woman was on Ozempic 6 months ago. She's going to be on Ozempic again because she just doesn't want to do the fucking work. So I'm not going to work with people like that anymore. I'm at a point in my career where I don't have to. Telltale sign of a good professional is, are they giving away boatloads of free practical information? Are they willing to get on the phone with you for free? Are they willing to listen to your problems? Or are they just constantly selling you something? Because at some point, I know you're going to buy from me because I've poured into you for free for months and months on end. And I'm doing it with nothing in return as an expectation because I don't need your fucking money. I don't. Even when I was broke and I was fucking scraping pennies, I still didn't need your money because there's still a headache that comes along with working with somebody who doesn't want to do the work. So if it has to be an equal energy exchange. That's what I tell all my clients. Like, if I'm not going to chase you for information, right? Because that's not my responsibility, but I will always be available to help you if you reach out to me. So that's the same thing. If an online coach has a shiny Instagram page, but then you have to click on this button and give them this piece of information and go down this rabbit hole to get any piece of advice from that individual, that person doesn't give a shit about serving clients. That person wants to be a mill and make as much money as possible without any regard for anybody else. And I get everybody runs their businesses differently. I understand that. But to me, we're here to help. And eventually we're going to get paid for it, whether it's today, whether it's 6 months from now, whether it's a year and a half from now. I have a woman today who signed up today. Her first day was today. She's been following me for 3 years. She's had two other coaches that she wasn't happy with. And she stayed in those unhappy coaching relationships because they made her sign contracts, which I don't even do that. So it's like, what are these coaches in it for? Because there's a lot of people, and again, like, if you have a contract and you're a good coach, cool, you can do both. Like, two things can be true at the same time. But at some point, like, if you're having to make people jump through hoops and you're not available to answer their questions and you make them wait and you make them pay and you make them submit all this information, what are you really in it for? And to me, like, I'm in it to help people. And I know that eventually I'll get paid for it. It may take, I mean, it took me fucking, been in this business for 15 years. I didn't see 5-figure months like some of these coaches expect to make in 3 months of being a coach. I didn't make 5 figures for 12 years. I was rolling towels at Equinox for $8 an hour. I was working at a deli for $12 an hour. Like, it's going to take time to build a brand and build a business. But the one thing that you're always should be available for is a human to human conversation. If at the worst, after that conversation, that person didn't buy anything, at least you understood one more person's problems and you had one more solution to that problem, which hopefully that person can use, but you've just learned something about that demographic. So that was just market analysis for you, if nothing else. And if you don't see it that way, and you're something like, I know coaches who won't get on the phone unless they get charged unless they get paid a consult fee.
I remember hearing that
For
I
what?
remember hearing that in a mentorship, like, "Oh, if you guys wanna charge a fee, like, that's up to you." I'm like, "Who the hell charges people just to talk?" Like, that's
Plenty,
insane. That is absurd.
plenty,
I'm
dude.
glad you brought up the contract thing too, because I have one, but it's funny because it works in reverse. It's like, "Hey, I'm contractually saying I will do this, 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 and this." So it's in fine print, so you know this is gonna happen. It's like it's so
That's
a
my
it's
contract. That's
so
exactly,
ass
yeah.
backwards. It's like the contract should be to hold the coach accountable to be like, "This is what you're buying."
Yeah, because people don't know. People get on Instagram and they see somebody with a large following, and they see somebody with pretty content, or they see somebody putting out this information, but that's not essentially what they're going to get when they start coaching with somebody. Like, there's been plenty of times where people have come to me and said, "Hey, like, you recommended so and so coach, but when I got to start working with them, they passed me off to an assistant. I never got to talk to them. They took 48 hours to reply. They never answered any of my questions." And I'm like, "Man, I'm sorry. I had no idea. I thought that coach was a good coach." But until you get into somebody's ecosystem, you don't know. And an immediate telltale sign is like, are they just running this massive team? Are you just another number to them? And unfortunately, like, you don't know until you know. And it's very hard to vet coaches because they can seem very awesome online and they can seem like they're saying all and doing all the right stuff. But then when you start paying them money, does that relationship start to change? And that's where I think authenticity is something that needs to be, and transparency needs to be had from the get-go. And that's, I think you and I do some of the best job in the business on that. Like, people know how much they're paying, people know exactly what they're getting, and we're not making anybody any promise.
No. I mean, I'll tell people the average is you're going to lose 10 to 20 pounds of fat, build 5 to 10 pounds of muscle, but that's assuming you do the work. So it's like you can throw averages at people and say, this is what should happen. But at the end of the day, we're not going to be like, this is absolutely what's going to happen, guaranteed 100%, because nobody can do that.
Nope. No. Well, it's like my event, right? Like, I tell people there's an ROI of coming to the event. But the ROI only happens if you show up to all the meetings and you take notes and you're engaged in the conversations. And then you try to meet 5 or 6 other people while you're there. You're personable while you're at the meetings, and you're not like trying to like sit in the back corner, or you don't show up to any of the socials. Like, the ROI is going to be there if you participate. But if you don't participate, what return do you expect to get?
And it's funny how there's so many parallels between like coaches that struggle and like clients that struggle because when I've been to so many of those events where it's like you see somebody sitting down in the audience and they're just on their phone the whole time, or they're like, oh sorry, I gotta work, I gotta like do this for the client, this for the client. I'm like, well, one, that's a pretty brutal business model that you can't even be at a conference to better yourself like fully. And
Yeah.
two, it's like you're missing out on the whole point of being here.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I always like, my clients are excited when I go to conferences. They're like, "Oh, you're going to go learn some more new shit and bring back to us like some stuff that you learned." Like, yeah, absolutely. Like, I always come back and I tell my clients what I learned. I get on a Zoom call the following week and I'm like, "Hey, this is a breakdown of what we learned. This is how I'm going to apply it to you guys." Like, they get pumped about that. Like, dude, the
I'm
amount of coaches that
stealing
I've
that.
asked, like, "Are you coming to the event?" And like, the objections that I'll get from coaches who are like, "Well, I can't afford it." Well, yeah, I couldn't afford it 5 years ago either, but my credit card could afford it, and then I paid it back at some point. Like, I'm willing to put myself into a little bit of debt to build a network and to build an educational base and to have continued education and mentorships, because it's worth it to me. That's an investment in my well-being financially down the road. Or it's like, well, I can't take time away from my business. I promise you, if you told your clients you were going away for 3 days to better your business and to better your knowledge base, they would support you. And if they didn't, they're not going to be a client for long anyway. So, like, all of these objections that I'll get from, it's the same shit. Like, I've tried everything. No, you haven't. No, you haven't. You haven't tried everything. You sit in front of your computer as a coach, hoping that things will get better, and you don't do anything about it. Like, the amount of coaches that I see who are fucking like new shoes every month, another photo shoot for their business, fucking Nikes and Lululemons, and going to coffee shops to work every single day, and spending, whatever it is, $70 a week on just coffee shops. Like, take all that money. Like, if today, like, right, like, we're 46 days away from the event. If you put $20 into an envelope every single day from now until April 13th, you would have the ticket paid for. Done. Ticket paid for. Look, like, yeah, like, ignore the travel and the hotel room, but like, the ticket would be paid for. So, like, it's not that much money to do any of this stuff, especially in the long haul of your life, where if you audit your expenses the same way somebody should be auditing their food consumption, you would realize that not only is this event affordable, but it's going to pay you back 10 times over. Like, how many podcasts have you been on because of that event, right?
Yeah.
Because of the people you met at the Real Coaches Summit.
That's how I
How many
get
friends
every
have you
guest
made?
on this show has been because of those events. It's wild. And it's a commonality between like high level coaches, like some of the most high level coaches that are making the most money in our industry, like guys like Jared Hamilton come to mind, where it's like he actively takes time to step away from the business because he knows how important it is. And it's the same with high level, like successful clients. Like I have, I'm sure you do too, clients that are making absurd amounts of money, have crazy obligations, but they see the value in taking time for themselves, taking that 30 to 60 minutes a day to put priority on them because it helps them perform better and be better for their kids, for their job, for just living life the way they want to.
Scarcity versus abundance, man. If you're going to operate from a place of scarcity, nothing will ever change. If you operate from a place of abundance and you believe that better things are going to come if you actually earn them, then that's exactly what you'll get. That's the energy you'll evoke. That's the people you'll surround yourself with. Like, it's so, like, I don't go to events to get blown away by anybody on stage anymore. I don't. I go to events because I want to be a part of this industry. I want to be weaved into it. I want to know who's doing big things. I want to emulate the people who are successful. And I want to learn directly from them and hear it from the horse's mouth. Because I'm not going to events to take pictures with people. I'm not going to events to sit there and compile a bunch of notes after being in business for 15 years and knowing most of the science at this point already, because it's all basic anyway. I'm going there because I want to be a part of this industry and I want to understand what other people are doing that I can improve upon myself. And unless I put myself into those rooms, I'll never have those opportunities. Those doors will never open. I won't get invited on podcasts. I won't make friends in this industry who I can pick up the phone and call at any moment and pick their brain on client case studies that are troubling to me. Like, that's the beauty of this networking aspect of events. And being short-sighted and saying like I can't afford it or I don't want to go or I'm not going to travel to this, cool. Then you're going to be in the same exact spot next year, or worse yet, you're not going to be in this industry for much longer. Like, that's the thing, is like I've been in this industry for 15 years because of my continued education, because of my networking, and I'll be here for another 15 years because I'm going to continue to do it. But most coaches within 3 to 5 years are gone.
And I think that's another green flag too for anybody listening who is like the end user, for somebody who is like somebody that's wants to improve their health. If you see me and Aram's media in April when the Real Coaches Summit is happening, chances are if you follow the people that we're tagging, that we're friends with, they're good coaches. Like, they are solid at what they do. And it's mind boggling because if I look back, I know at least personally, like if I didn't spend $1 on mentorship, and I've probably spent north of 40K at this point in 4 years of business on mentorship, if I didn't do that and only went to the events, the conferences, I would be the same, if not better. I can say that with absolute certainty because the quality of people in the audience, and if you actually go out of your way to make friends and learn from them, it's worth more than anything you could possibly purchase from the comfort of your own home.
And the likelihood that you'll do any, like, the amount of classes and shit that I've bought online that sit in my email box that I've never even opened is ridiculous. Because again, no accountability, there's no spirit, there's no energy, there's no like, there's no actual human connection, right? Like, of course, yes. Are you going to learn everything you need to know about menopause from Barbie Bowles in an hour in April? No. But she's going to also be sitting there at 3 meals a day. So if you have questions about your clients that are in menopause, guess what? She's going to love talking about that shit because she's actually passionate about what she does. And she's going to be available to you for an entire 2.5 days. You don't get that, like, without that type of proximity, you don't get better. And most other conferences are going to charge you out the ass for that type of proximity. Dude, I'm not going to name any names, but I was looking at another conference that's happening in April. It's 2 days. The one day only is $750 with nothing but just speakers. And then if you want the VIP day, it's $2,250. That comes with one meal, and it gives you a chance to actually be around the speakers. I mean, dude, you've been now for a couple of years. Is there any red velvet rope around any of these people? Are they not willing to just fucking talk to you and hang
It's
out with you?
it's
Like, everybody is there for the same reason.
it's mind boggling because when you go to an event like yours or Raise the Bar or Luca's or Andrew's, like all of them have in common that it's like there's no red velvet rope. It's like this is how it should be. This is like we're all just coaches. But I could tell you the ones that do have the red velvet rope, I probably got the least out of. I could think of a couple right now where it's like they got high level people that charge a high price tag. They get on stage, they say their piece, they book it out, and they're out of there. You don't get to see them ever again unless you're maybe a VIP, and then you get to ask them one singular question, and you're spending like $500-600 extra just to do that. So it's like it's a no brainer. But like I said, if you guys are the end user, if you're like, how do I like I jumped on this podcast because I want to learn how to help with my menopause stuff. It's like find people like the ones that we're going to tag at this event and follow them because a lot of them are so good at what they do. They put out amazing information. Like I just named Jared, and I know you were hanging out with him, Ryan Cassim, Kevin Driscoll. Like these
Yep.
guys put out such good information. So if nothing else, follow me and Aram and follow those people we're about to put up on our media.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is like there's a few people in this industry that truly do have integrity and authenticity, and we're not trying to sell you a bill of goods. Like, I know that that's hard to hear because any good salesman is going to tell you they're not trying to sell you something. But I think we've proven it millions of times over. We show up constantly. We don't ever stop serving. And that's the difference. And you can see that's palpable. It's not hard to cut through that and see that we're doing it the right way. So I'm not saying like you have to believe us, but we've given you so much evidence that you should, that if at this point you're feeling lost, one DM away from asking Brian or me a question. And if we can't help you, we're going to send you to somebody who can.
Yep. Now I can't stop thinking of all the people that we're going to see in April. I'm pretty hyped because I know if you guys have been listening to the podcast long enough, like pretty much everybody I met last year was on the podcast at one point or another. So get ready for even better guests coming up after April.
Yeah, I mean, even just the attendees this year, like a lot of, like I would say the first 2 years was kind of people like in that like middle ground of just starting out, or maybe they're just a couple of years in. I mean, dude, Andrew Coates will be in the room. Jared Hamilton will be in the room. Mark Fisher is going to be in the
Oh,
room.
I
I think
forgot
Kenny
Mark's coming.
Santucci will probably. I
That's
think Kenny
awesome.
Santucci is probably going to come. Like, there's people that don't even need to like technically be there because they're not going to learn anything there, are still coming because they just want to hang out. They want to be part of the industry. They want to see what's going on. They want to have their finger on the pulse. Like they want to just be woven into the fabric of this thing that we're all building together. And those are the people who are doing it for the right reasons, as opposed to the people that are like, well, I'm not coming unless I'm speaking on stage. Or why would I take away time from my business to travel to an event where I know everything? Okay, cool. Then stay in your house. Stay in your fucking house. Stay in front of your computer and let's see how much shit changes for you. It's the same thing that like, well, I've tried it all. Okay, you're right. I don't know what I'm talking about. You've tried it all and obviously nothing works. You might as well just stop trying.
Yeah. And I always wonder, I'm like, the people that do think that way, like, how can you justify charging somebody X amount of money as a client when you're not improving your craft? Like, when you're doing the exact same thing year after year after year, you're not keeping up with the literature, you're not keeping up with the methods. Like, how can you honestly look somebody in the eye and say, I'm doing the best I possibly can to serve you as best as I'm capable?
They're not. They're not. But people unfortunately don't know better. Right? They're not there's no stand there's no governing body in our industry. There's nobody holding us to a standard. Right? And like I don't want to spend my time calling bad coaches out all day long because that would be my full-time job. So unfortunately, unless people are proactively seeking these opportunities, no different than somebody should be proactively planning their food. Like proactivity is everything. Getting ahead of the problem is everything. Educating yourself, arming yourself with information, building a network, building a support system around yourself is how you become the best version as a human being, as a business owner. It's just paramount to your own personal growth. And I dive at these opportunities. I would go to every fucking event every year if I could, but I mean, the reality is like I can't, but you'll see me at more often than not, and it's because I want to be a part of it, and I don't want to leave any stone unturned.
I mean, to your point, I gave my fiance the heads up. I'm like, as my business grows, I'm just telling you, I'm going to try and be at like as many events as I possibly can before you divorce me. So I'm just going to let you know now.
And as somebody who's in the medical profession, she probably does the same thing.
Yeah. Oh, she goes to conferences to present all the time. Like she was just at a conference in residency where she presented on a guy that like downed a thing of bleach because he was an inmate trying to take care of it. But yeah, I mean, interesting stuff because the guy lived. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I would have loved to have seen that. But that's her realm. She does the life or death stuff. I do the let's not see my fiance, soon to be wife. I want to keep you away from her.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we are preventative medicine. That's what we are. That's what we're supposed to be. We're the front line of healthcare. And I take that title very seriously. And I think a lot of coaches don't actually understand that that's what their role is. Like our role is to keep people out of hospitals and to keep people out of the insurance model. Our role is to make sure that your mental and physical health is your responsibility and you're being proactive about it. And I will turn over every stone and unearth every possible opportunity to make sure that I'm the best that I can be for the people that are paying me money. And if there ever gets to a point where that's not what I'm doing, then I'll get out of the business.
Yeah. Hey guys, so unfortunately, at around this point in the conversation, the technology had a bit of a hiccup and it is just me and Aram talking over each other because it's not synced up properly. So I cut it there just to spare you the ear pain that came from me editing this. So you don't have to go through what I just went through. But that being said, you didn't miss much. Just make sure that if you are a coach in the fitness and nutrition space, or if you're just a really super health enthusiast, like definitely check out the Real Coaches Summit for sure, because I know last year it was such a great group between all the fitness professionals and also people that really just love fitness. And it was just an incredible experience overall. So the link is going to be down below if you want to check it out. It's going to be in Vegas and it's going to be a fun time. And along with that, after you're done doing that, go and check out Aram. He puts out incredible stuff. He is, as you can tell, brutally honest and will shoot you straight no matter what when it comes to his Instagram text posts or his latest booty videos that he's been putting out. I'll leave that to you to search and find out what I'm talking about. So check him out at 4 Weeks to the Beach. The link is going to be down in the show notes or the description. And along with that, if you found this helpful in any way, shape, or form, and you had somebody in your head at some point during the conversation where you're like, damn, my friend or family member really needs to hear this, go ahead and send it their way. Let's share the episodes out as much as you can, because one, I want to grow this so that people get amazing information and high quality information, because unfortunately now podcasting is becoming a sea of misinformation. So definitely get it to your friends and family who are interested, and I will be eternally grateful. So thank you for tuning in all the way through. I will see you next time, but until then, go kick some ass. Later.